It's a pleasure to finally have you.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me
We
here,
had this,
Robert.
we had talked about it for a while, right?
Right.
Yeah. I think you and I both just busy, like trying to do whatever to.
Yeah, it's life.
Yeah.
Busy life, working and doing our thing.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but no, it's great to be here.
So one of the things that's really interesting about you is like I have a very strong heart resonance towards your work, even though like my students will tease me because I generally don't like glide and like nudity and table stuff because I'm so matte focused.
Sure.
But everything about your demeanor and how you deal with business and whatever actually resonates very strongly with me. You're also like a very, in my opinion, in interacting with you, you were a very like heart-centered therapist, like who really understood the capacity of nurturing touch. And one of the things that's happened in our recent industry recently is there was all this stuff about massage envy and sexual assault. And
I read
thought
that
about,
too.
I think you would agree with me. It's like it really hits me in my heartstrings to have to deal with women, in issues concerning safety.
Right.
Because you and I, like, how long have you worked as a therapist?
23 years.
Yeah, so like longer than I have. So I'm about 15, and the thing is, I know that you strive to create a safe, like sacred space for people to receive touch, and that's part of the thing that there's this empathy, this sort of simpatico relationship where we're both trying to create that, but we're creating it in like different contexts. Meaning mine's mat-based, yours is table-based.
Yeah, I think the most important thing to kind of think about all of this is just how you connect with the client, and touching on the massage envy and the sexual assault, the alleged sexual assault that's been happening over there. I think that there is a disconnect with places like that as opposed to folks like us who are working on more of a private level and who are working in, and also we're kind of a tier above some of the private therapists out there in that we're educators now.
Yeah.
And so we have to really work, especially being men, we have to really work at conveying that sense of the therapeutic self.
Yeah.
And also doing it in a way that doesn't make people feel uncomfortable. You have an edge and an advantage because you are working on the mat, you are working with people who are fairly clothed, so those boundaries are not really addressed, whereas on my end of the spectrum, I am trying to facilitate a safe and honoring space for that person to get on the table to receive body work, and not necessarily in a Lomi context. That's certainly one way to do it, but just in the regular, day-to-day people going out and doing massage therapy and having to get undressed and get on the table and receive that from a total stranger.
Yeah.
So the demeanor and how we carry ourselves, especially as men, we have to work a little bit harder at that. But I think it's definitely possible. And I've found that with Lomi and the mentality that it teaches and the philosophy that it teaches, it kind of eliminates some of that gender thing to a degree. I mean, it's still there, but I also feel like we can strive to be very safe therapists and help people, especially women, opposite gender, feel safe on the table, and be able to experience that vulnerability again on the table.
I think from a marketing standpoint, any sort of niche in bodywork, massage, any sort of niche service is immediately easier to market to a select group of people, Lomi or Thai or Reboot, whatever you want to call it. Then in addition, it's, for me, the resonance I have with you is I immediately understood that you understood the greater sort of energetic and spiritual implications of dealing with touch. And the thing is, it's not something I spend a huge amount of time, I guess, fixating on. Like even when I say energetics or energy, like I get a little nervous maybe because I'm still looking at like the pain science community and not trying to understand research studies and what happens when we deal with therapeutic touch. Right. But my work is a very deep part of my spirituality.
Yeah.
And that's something that's hard to convey to people who have 9-to-5 jobs where they work for IBM and maybe they don't feel that emotional, spiritual connection with their work.
But they feel it when they step into your space.
And that's the thing. It's like even my space, my studio here is a converted garage. For a lot of people, they would prefer maybe a more formal facility But the thing is, it's about the work I do, not the facility itself.
Yeah.
You know, it's like I knew I would never be able to recreate a spa. I had nervousness about, I don't know, would female clients even come see me? Like, it's obvious that I work out of my home. And the thing was, it was like, it's been a roaring success, but it's because I was making video talking about, you know, my spiritual connection with my work and helping people in chronic pain. You know, I was working with other educators like you to promote, you know, make video content to talk about our shared, you know, desire to try to help people and create safe space, regardless of sexuality, gender, race, creed.
Right.
You know, for me, it was like the most human thing ever is touch.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, I think touching on your point about energy and being able to convey that in a practical way to people. I mean, we can be on the pink cloud and we can do a lot of the woo-woo stuff, and I think a lot of people are attracted to that, and they want to experience that, especially the 9-to-5 day-to-day people, because let's face it, you know, we're living in a very dogmatic world, we're living in a very pragmatic world, and people are looking for that escape. They're looking for that escape, and they want to come to a place and feel like they can escape from a lot of that. And I think bringing that energetic element to what it is that we do, it's just inherently there. For me, energy is intention, and intention is medicine, in my humble opinion. So the intention that I'm putting forth, as in Lomi, I'm bringing space of aloha, which is love, compassion, inclusiveness, non-judgment, into this space. And I want to try to emulate that in how I touch somebody. And I think people can feel that. I think they can pick up on that. You know, we teach in massage school that, you know, when you're angry and you're touching somebody, they can pick up on that. Well, sometimes they can, sometimes they can't. I think it has a deep impact on the therapist, their emotional state during, you know, working and being able to convey, you know, what they perceive that energy is onto somebody. But I think other people on the table can really feel that. They can really feel it with the intention of the touch. Whether they're being manipulated on a mat in those meridian points being pressed on, and, you know, and opening up that channel way to somebody who just has this loving, compassionate heart spirit gliding over the table, breathing, working in kind of a dance-like way, shamanic type way, to help kind of clear out their negativity just by that touch. So I think we're almost like pioneers in that. I mean, we certainly didn't start it, but we're definitely on the way to making it more widely known and putting it in a practical sense.
Yeah.
I think that's the main thing. If you take any type of spiritual philosophy, any type of ceremony, any type of thing, and how do you practically apply that to your life? How do you practically apply that to your practice? And creating a balance between the left hemisphere and the right hemisphere of your brain, that analytical side, that scientific side, and being able to meld those two together to where there's no polarization. Right now we have so much polarization in our community about, you know, the science and the evidence-based stuff, and then those who are strictly in their right brain, strictly in their creativity, that are just channeling the angels and channeling God and channeling all this other sort of stuff and doing that. I think there can be imbalance in both areas. I think with what you do in your work and what I'm trying to do in my work is try to bring that balance back.
Yeah.
You know.
Sometimes students are asking, you know, questions. They're trying to help clients. They want research studies. They want, well, what do I do in this specific instance? Mm-hmm. And then I always go back to slow down, breathe, touch the client, and connect with them.
Right.
Like, the thing is, I can't even tell them, you and another person can report the exact same issue. And I might treat it, quote unquote, in 3 different ways.
Yeah.
Depending on, and the thing is, when I say intuition, depending on how it feels at that time, depending on what's going on. There's a whole host of factors. And I can't teach them through rote memorization. In my workbooks and videos, I give them sequences.
Sure.
Those sequences are just a jumping off point, because the real magic happens in improvisation.
Yeah, absolutely. But where would the improvisation be without the foundation?
Yeah.
That's the advice that I would give to all of the New Age therapists out there, all the people who are strictly rooted in energetics, to really cross over and really study the anatomy. Really study the anatomy. Get scientific with it. Learn about what makes all this tick from a physiological and and a scientific standpoint, and then apply your energetics to that. And I think your practice and your I guess your knowledge of that will grow exponentially.
I don't think that the science reduces the magic.
No, the science doesn't. I mean, there's magic, there's magical thinking,
Yeah.
there's all of that stuff, but really what we're generating on the table and we're generating with people are positive experiences. And for me, that's enough. And if they have that spiritual experience through it, they have some sort of opening and awakening, it goes deep into, levels of core of their psyche and of their being. We use that word in their being a lot. And their being is just who they are. So get them on the table, and work on them in that balanced form. I've had people get up off the table and they say, are you doing energy work on me? You doing this type of energy work? And I say, no, I'm not. I'm not really doing it. I'm just putting intention to it. But they say it feels like that to me. So there's something happening there. It's happening from a physiological standpoint. It's happening from, a creative, mental, and possibly even mysterious standpoint. We'll never really know.
Yeah. The science is ongoing. The research is ongoing. We
Right.
learn more.
Right. And I don't down the science, not at all, because when I started off doing this type of work, I was doing primarily the clinical and the fix-it stuff, and that was very rewarding for me.
Well, even the fix-it stuff, because chronic pain is really my bread and butter. And I can notice patterns over the years, like you get better at pattern recognition. So when it comes to something like referred pain, if I press on an area and somebody tells me, oh, I feel pain, but it's somewhere else other than where I'm pressing, I encourage that sort of communication, and I explain to my clients, listen, when you tell me those things, when you get a very distinct sensation, if I press on one spot and you feel it somewhere else, when you tell me those things, that helps because I'm building up an internal file, an internal database of pattern recognition.
Right.
Then they'll ask me, why does that happen? And I go, I don't know.
Yeah. Well, sometimes, I don't know, you don't know, we don't know.
Not completely sure.
Sometimes we do, though, and
Yeah. And the thing is, I'm very comfortable telling them what I don't know. These are the things that I think that are going on in a simple explanation, while at the same time leaving space to be able to ask, deeper questions.
Here's something to roll around in your old noodles, that we are coined as body workers, as massage therapists. When you get really into the deep core of what we do, we are nervous system therapists. We are brain therapists at the body level. And that's kind of a good place to start. I think in the beginning, you learn massage, you learn any type of modality, you learn how to just manipulate soft tissue and help somebody feel good. But then as you start to get more experienced, you learn through continuing education, because that's where it's at, folks, continuing education. And learning more about how the body works and people's approaches to it, and studying that anatomy, and learning that the brain really is quite an intricate and amazing organ that we have in our body that controls all of this stuff. And just learning how to tap into that, we kind of evolve into body-oriented psychology almost. We're right there at the precipice of what a psychotherapist does with the talk models and that sort of thing. And now we're seeing other types of body psychotherapy, somatic experiencing, EMDR, all of these things that help people with their issues and trauma, because we know that gets stored in our body. That's something that has been proven. So as you get further and further along in your practice, I think we eventually evolve into that. And I think it's a great evolution and a great progression. Don't just stay where you're at with just rubbing stuff. Because all this stuff that Robert and I are talking about, you can't really get this stuff at most establishments unless you have guys like me working at those types of places. So I always say that, those of us who are working on the private level, those of us who are really dedicating our heart and our soul in our homes to really providing good therapy for people, seek us out.
Yeah. And it takes time, and I think research. People are always going to ask friends for who to go see. But I think increasingly the reason why I continue to put out video content to communicate with people is it's been lucrative for my practice and allows me to continue educating, because some educators, they get into a weird mindset of competition.
Yeah.
And for me, it was always like, okay, I mean, there's something in my head that rolls around about that, but I'm like, it's collaboration.
Yeah.
Like if you and I make a video together, I don't feel like my work is somehow diminished or vice versa.
No.
It's like, no, we're cross-promoting.
Yeah.
We're letting people know that there are different kinds of body work available that, for instance, if you talk about Thai massage or Lomi, the vast majority of the general public doesn't exist.
We have a saying in Hawaiian wisdom, and that is not all wisdom comes from one school. So, there are different wisdoms here, even beyond us. And so I never felt that I was competing with anyone. Educators, anyway. Establishments, maybe. But
Establishments, well, yeah.
Yeah.
And the thing is, there's something about it, but also, even when it comes to establishments from a business sense, you and I have the capacity technologically to be able to do a Facebook Live, communicate with people, post a YouTube video in a way those facilities, frankly, are not.
Right.
And if we do this consistently, my business has shown me that it actually works, that people do watch this stuff, that it increases people's capacity to find us,
Yeah.
it establishes us as authorities, and when we talk about creating safe space, when we're dealing with the debacle that happened at Massage Envy with sexual assault, we get to be educators who stand up, to talk about what we're doing and the issues that are going on. The Thai Massage Jam that I fostered here in Austin, one of the good things about it is massage is often thought of as private. And one of the best things about the Thai Massage Jam was I realized that since people are clothed, we could work publicly.
Yeah.
And you get everybody publicly to come in and deal with their touch issues and to deal with consent and touch and intimacy in a community setting where, for instance, as massage therapists, we had to deal with that. I don't know what your response was when you went to massage school, but I had a very deep sense when I went to massage school that I was like, I was never touched.
Yeah.
Like other than my parents weren't like distant, but other than getting like a hug from my father periodically, there wasn't a lot of ongoing touch. And then I was providing a culture and providing a community space of safety where people could deal with their touch needs and actually get what they needed very inexpensively.
Yeah. That's a really great point to make. I grew up in an area in a home where there was touch. There was some sort of massage and energy type of work going on, given my background. But when I got into, but I didn't have that knowledge of what I was really doing and what was really going. I just knew that it felt good, And so getting into massage school provided me with that avenue of really understanding deeply what all this other stuff was about.
Yeah, dealing with it feels good. The students, when they're asking for that logical, rational explanation of why they should do this or that, and I'd say, how does the person you're working on feel? And the person they were working on would go, oh, it feels great. And I'm like, good, keep doing that.
Well, and with the whole with the whole alleged sexual assault stuff that happens at these establishments, I'm pretty passionate about explaining that the people who are authoring this type of excess in the sexuality and just doing what they're doing, they're not therapists. I think they're just people who decided to go and get a certificate and to mask, put some sort of legitimacy over what they really are. And I think we've come a long way in our industry to kind of get rid of that stigma that massage and bodywork is a sexual thing. The prostitution profession used us as a mask for their thing because that was kind of the end, to make it look legitimate. But that's not what massage was originally about. Not at all. So we constantly have to kind of deal with that, and we see it happening more often at the establishments. And it was really interesting that when I read that article that it was the therapist doing the alleged sexual assault on the client. What I've experienced in places that I've worked has been the exact opposite. Where people are coming in thinking, oh, I can test the waters and do that. So it was real interesting to kind of read that article and to see that more and more
happens. It happens
happening
both
that way.
ways. I mean, generally, I guess what I would encourage people to understand is that in most states in the United States, you have to have training and a license to be a massage therapist, and that means that license can also be taken away and criminal charges can be filed against people who touch people without their consent. So if you're a victim of sexual assault from a massage therapist, I want to convey that it's not just about you, in the sense of, if you report that person, there's a greater likelihood that they're not going to be able to continue doing that to someone else. And it's very important that those things take place. And it's part of the reason we have licensure, which I often have like mixed feelings about, because of the complexities of being an educator traveling across state lines.
Yeah.
But at the same time, when it comes to things like sexual assault, that's one of the key reasons I think that massage licensure was passed. And what I'm saying is, we want to get those people out. We don't want them continuing, souring our profession and our name and hurting people. It's not,
I also think that therapists sometimes will get thrown into that sexual assault category because they're not utilizing common sense when they're communicating with their clients at establishments and wherever else. As far as the draping is concerned, what we're allowed to do, what we're not allowed to do. And of course, most of us guys kind of get into that rut as well, because we're working on glutes, we're working, close to the breast tissue area. I mean, it's like there's a lot of things that we have to take into consideration in order to make that person feel like nothing weird is going on, or in their mind that nothing is weird is going on. Even when we're being as professional as we can possibly be, we have to be more mindful. Draping and boundaries, they are amazing things. You need boundaries, and healthy boundaries. Some people are not inhibited, and they'll let you do whatever you want with them, and everything's all fine. And other people need a little bit more TLC. They need a little bit more tender, loving care. So I think that's also something to consider, that there's a lot of stuff that gets thrown around because we are just not, we're not really conveying that sense of therapeutic self and how we go about working on somebody. So that's also something to kind of consider too.
Yeah, I'll continually, as I continue to educate, I'll post videos periodically where I sit on someone, and that's something I actually do very commonly in my sessions. But when I talk about that in class, I'm giving students information about when do you use this, when do you not use it, and I always have to address it not from just like a technique standpoint, but a cultural standpoint. Is this a new client that you've never worked on?
Right.
It's probably not appropriate in a Western cultural context to sit on your client. This is a very different form of therapy. And for me, it's very easy for me to swim in that and navigate it very easily. But I always have to consider my audience and who I'm putting out content for, and usually I'm addressing that verbally. But I'm also trying to open up the culture to potentials and possibility, and normalizing the sort of touch, because even though the work I'm doing is clothed, in many ways it's actually more intimate, in my opinion, because of the amount of body contact I'm making with clients. It looks like I'm wrestling with them or doing Brazilian jiu-jitsu at points. I'm like wrapping limbs around them and pulling on them or pressing.
Well, you're in control of the person. They're giving you total control, and there's a certain amount of intimacy and vulnerability in that. With Lomi, because the draping is a little bit more minimal, I think what really helps people to get into that process of being on the table with Lomi, or even with Thai, with any of those things, is clear communication and consultation. With every person that I see for Lomi, there's always a consultation. There's always some sort of communication and consultation, and clear communication to establish what it is that we're doing, how we're doing it, what they think about it, what they think about the draping, what their draping needs are, that sort of thing. I think Lomi is maybe a step up from those who are completely clothed and who want to get into that that on the table and not have all of that, and be able to be worked on in a safe way. Because Lomi is radically different from some of the other massage styles out there, in that it's more of a kind of a ritual and a ceremony that sees that person as a beloved member of family and his child, and treats them as such. And the draping is minimal on Lomi because we are wanting to move from head to toe without any hindrances of the draping. But we also have to take into consideration the boundaries that people set forth with us, and work and adapt through that so that they do feel safe. Lomi is not for everybody, just like Thai might not be for everybody. But I think those who seek it out, they kind of research it a little bit. They kind of know what they're getting into, but then but they need more assurance and reassurance, and they need to know that the therapist, the practitioner, is on the level when they're doing it. That's why Lomi is a little bit more vulnerable in a lot of ways, in that the draping is such that you don't have much on you except for a sarong on the back side and the front side and the chest, everything. But once people get into that mode of getting on the table, of relaxing, of surrendering, knowing that they feel safe, the experience becomes very transformative for them. Even with people who have those type of body issues, being treated that way, because we don't get much of that honoring of our bodies that we normally do. Maybe when we were children, when we're just kind of these innocent little kids running around. We grow older, we have to wear clothing, we have to do all this stuff, and society says we need to look this way and look that way. And then to kind of go back to that kind of childlike state. I think it's the same with Thai as well, because people might feel like they're not as mobile, but then that therapist works for them and helps them open their mobility. It helps opening them up. It's opening them up to their potential as a total person. I know we're kind of getting philosophical here, but I think that's also a very important component to the work that we do specifically, that we're really helping people to become more embodied. And part of that is doing the kind of work I think that we do in the way we do it.
Yeah.
So.
And that's the thing I was saying about that sort of connection, resonance I've always had with you in the conversations, because you always seem to be able to understand the sort of deeper spiritual implication of the work. And the reason why my heartstrings were pulled with the massage envy debacle is, for so many years I've tried to create safe space, and then there's like this huge public outcry about sexual assault with the massive largest massage provider in the United States. So it's just sort of disheartening as a private practitioner who, along with you, has prided themselves on creating safe space where people can come in and deal with touch. So, for instance, from the outside, people are sometimes confused. They're like, "Do you work on guys?" And I'm like, "Yeah."
Me too.
And the thing is, it's really great. It's hard to explain to males who don't have the experience of physical intimacy with other men, to be able to help them with their stuff, the sort of camaraderie that goes with me getting a session with you or vice versa.
Yeah.
It's something that's out of people's cultural context in the U.S.
Well, and I think in certain parts, I think we have more of a challenge being in more of a conservative area to try to tackle those things. Whereas if we were living in California or living in Northern California, you really don't have that problem. I lived up there and worked there for a time. It didn't have those types of challenges that we kind of do down here in Texas for that sort of thing. But I also think that with at Envy, and I'm sorry to be so disparaging, is that I've worked there. You can't make connections with people there because things are so quick. It's so fast and so quick. That there really isn't enough time to make that connection. So, and I think that kind of leaves it open for possible negative things to happen and to take place, even if they're mild little mistakes that nobody means anything by, two people who really want to go in there and try to test the waters on stuff. So, I don't feel like those places really generate the type of connection you can do. I did my best. I would say I did my best to try to make those connections with people, but. Which I think kind of goes back to, it's not about what you do, it's about who you are.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter how good of a therapist you are. If you're a creep, or if you produce a vibe out there that people don't resonate with, then they're not going to come to see you no matter how good you are.
Yeah.
So that's why it's always good. That's why I always told people, really convey that sense of therapeutic self no matter where you're working. Even if you have that limited amount of time, try to make that connection with somebody. You might not be as successful the first time, maybe the second, maybe the third time. But I think there's more of a chance of connection when you're working with somebody face to face in a setting where there's enough time to do it.
I mean, as a private practitioner, I made my sessions longer. They're like 3 hours, so it's like this heroic dose of touch and intimacy. There is no rush. And then also, one allegation can basically destroy my entire business. Yeah. So, I had more sort of my chips on the table, so to speak, but it was so upstanding as far as my social media presence and educating people. And then also when I'm dealing with students is trying to help students deal with the sort of emotional and psychological things that they're going to deal with as therapists.
Yeah, you kind of pick up on other people's stuff. You know, it's just there. I mean,